Okay, hello. Right, before I get started, I want to provide a quick content note for this talk. I'm going to be talking about parental leave, and by extension, I'm going to be talking about some aspects of being a parent. The road to parenting can be incredibly challenging for a lot of people. So if that's you, and you're really in the pain right now, then it's okay to leave at any time. I will not be offended by that. But also do know that I do see you, and you are not alone in this. Right then. My name's Cummings. I'm a senior consultant software developer at OpenClass Software. While working in my previous role, I became a mum through adoption to the most incredible little kid. So I took 6 months off on parental leave. Before going off, I'd watched other women in my department take leave, practically disappear, and then return to no fanfare or support. When they returned, I watched them struggle with anxiety and self-doubt, and it led to some of them taking other roles or leaving the organization entirely. I was determined this would not happen to me. Like them, I'd worked really hard to get where I was. My tech career was incredibly important to me. It was fulfilling and challenging, and it was the first time I'd really loved my job. I was excited to finally be a mum, but I feared I was losing a hugely important part of myself. I wanted to make sure I could reclaim that part of me as easily as possible when I returned. The biggest hurdle for me was how much technical knowledge I would miss while I was away and how I could reclaim that knowledge as quickly as possible when I returned. There was nothing in place to support that. So I created a role-specific return-to-work strategy for myself and my technical peers to use. This supported me and other developers and QAs who returned from leave. Today, I'm going to talk you through how it feels to take leave, why it's so important we support our new techie parents, and the 3 things that we can all do to make taking leave and returning as easy as possible. First of all, you don't have to take notes. If you go to this QR code, there's a link to my talk write-up with lots of references and stuff like that, so use that and you can just sit back and enjoy. Second, I want to talk about why I'll be saying parental leave and not maternity leave. Well, first of all, parents aren't quite as binary as some would like to think, and it's important that we represent any and all parents taking leave. But also, for dads, you get 2 weeks off. That is not enough for you. It's so unfair. Taking extended leave is so important. It's great for bonding, it improves outcomes for children, and increases gender equity. Also, being on parental leave is very hard, but it's also so awesome, and I want that experience for any wannabe parent out there. So as I take you on this journey, don't think about it as women and mothers taking leave from your teams, though do think about them as well. Think about it as how we make it safe for everyone in your team to take extended parental leave. Tech roles often rely on us keeping up to date with the cutting edge of technology. We work fast and fail fast. We crunch. We work long hours. We really wholly commit to work. Well, unfortunately, that does not align at all with taking 6 to 12 months off work, where you're not thinking about work or tech blogs or podcasts or, oh my God, AI. All you care about is feeding your child, sleep, feeding yourself, sleep, trying to have a shower, probably not having enough time for that shower, and praying for some sleep. Do you think ChatGPT would look after my kid for like 10 minutes while I have a quick nap? Because that would be really good. Then one day, all of that collides really violently with returning to work. I always worried that the roles of developer and mum did not align very well. My favorite project before I was a mum was one of those real crunch out the code type jobs. I was working 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. every day. Well, I've got to make room for nursery pickups now and bath time and bedtime, so that's not happening anymore. And I've read everywhere and heard today how important sleep is for our code quality. Sleep bad equals code bad. Well, then, yes, that's going to be a problem for me. And kids get sick all the time. I already feel so unreliable when I have to take a day off sick, and now I have to do it when they're off sick as well. I can't flow, I can't get into crunch, I can't work long hours. Worst developer ever. Okay, so you've returned to work after the most intense 6 months of your life. You're exhausted, you're overwhelmed, you feel like a completely different person. And then on top of that, everything about work is different. Let's do a quick thought exercise. Think about the last time you were off on holiday, lovely time, and then you came back to work and you had to get caught up on everything that you'd missed. How did you find that? Now imagine that holiday wasn't really a holiday, and instead it was 6 months long. Now imagine you haven't had a decent night's sleep in those 6 months. How would you find catching up then? In prep for this talk, I had to think about all the changes that have gone on in my team in the last 6 months, and actually the list was way longer than I was expecting. I'm in a team of 11, and we had 6 staffing changes in that time, including a change to our technical lead. We've completely changed our approach to testing and when we test. And actually, our service looks and behaves very differently now compared to where it was back in January. But all those changes were introduced really slowly to my team. Everybody had time to learn how to use new tools. We all had a say in the changes to our ways of working, and we've built good relationships with new teammates. Imagine instead turning up one day and all those things had changed seemingly overnight. When we get it wrong, we leave our new parents feeling out of the loop and isolated, in a period of time where their sense of self is already so utterly challenged. They will be at risk of developing intense imposter syndrome, mental health problems, and it can lead to people leaving an organisation. It's understandable then that someone taking extended parental leave feels like a massive risk to everyone involved. But those early months of bonding between parent and child are crucial. We must create an environment that de-risks taking leave, such as when someone becomes a parent. But why us? Well, historically, onboarding and re-onboarding has been the roles of HR and line managers. But as we see teams become more self-managed, it falls to people like you, like us, to support our colleagues through things like returning from parental leave. Also, it's really hard to spot bad process when you don't see it every day. And this is not something you're going to see every day. Instead, it's likely to fall to your returners who have to deal with all those bad processes to then fix them for you at the end. A really good example of that is at Google. So they have parking spaces right outside of their buildings for their pregnant staff, which is fantastic. But they only have that because when she was chief executive at the time, a pregnant Sheryl Sandberg really struggled to walk from one end of their car park to the other. So she used her privilege and position to ask for that change. Women only make up 26% of the UK tech sector workforce and only 5% of leadership roles in UK tech. So if we're waiting for mothers to rise to the top before we make meaningful change, we're going to be waiting a while. We cannot ask our new parents who are exhausted and overwhelmed to wade through all these bad processes and then expect them to have the energy and bandwidth to fix them all for us. We are all accountable for making the tech industry a safe and welcoming environment for women and diverse genders, and a big part of that is how we tackle parental leave. So while our people teams focus on paternity leave, parental pay, and flexible working, as development leaders, we must limit the knowledge gap created during leave and consider mental health and well-being on return. So how do we do that? Because we absolutely can do that. Everything I suggest today has been inspired by taking parental leave, but you'll come to see how this will support anybody taking long-term leave, be that sick leave, bereavement leave, or sabbaticals. Also, there's been a lot of talk in the last 2 days about onboarding, and this stuff will help there as well. So how do we get it right? We get it right with documentation. I know we all hate doing it, We hate writing it, it's dull, and we hate keeping it up to date. And I can also genuinely hear some people in the room thinking, oh, agile processes, Sinead. Working software over comprehensive documentation. And yes, I do agree with you, but also individuals over process and tools is another agile principle. And in this case, we're going to be using documentation to support our individuals. Let's think about a situation that a lot of us will have seen before. Someone new joins your team, looks through all your hard work, and decides that your entire architecture is wrong. They would have done things completely differently. Well, your objects have got stupid names. That's obviously one microservice, not two. And why, oh God, have you got lambdas everywhere? In the context of our returner, they may return and disagree with some of the technical decisions that the team has made. It's perfectly understandable to be resistant to change when you've missed some or all of the decision-making process. As talked about earlier on today, they'll also have a bias for what was in place before they took their leave. Showing your returner the options that you've considered and why you've made certain design decisions will take them from resistance through exploration and into acceptance. Documenting design decisions helps your team make better decisions overall. It builds trust between the individual and the team, and it reduces that knowledge gap. Also remember, no decision is too small when you've had 6 to 12 months of work. What might feel like an inconsequential change for you could be a significant change to the ways of working for your returner. You don't have to write an essay about it, just make a note of it somewhere so they're aware of that change. Think about how many mistakes you would make if 6 months of changes weren't documented or communicated to you. Our returners are already going to be feeling incredibly anxious on their return. Add to that making loads of little mistakes because coding standards have changed or the service doesn't run the same and nobody told them. We're just going to be compounding those feelings of anxiety. But get creative. Think about the medium that best suits the information you're trying to share. Like I said, it doesn't have to be a big technical document or blog. Think about recording videos or demos. Share mural boards, record team meetings, use AI tooling to build summaries of huge pieces of content. We get it right for our returners when we assume nothing about what matters to them and what information they'll need to know. We build trust by providing transparency of the decision-making process, and we reduce anxiety by ensuring they have everything they need to continue to perform their jobs well. We get it right by keeping in touch. So I'm back. I've had 6 months off, and my team has done a fantastic job of documenting everything just like we agreed. Except now I have 83 Confluence pages to read, 1,200 emails, 200 Teams chats, and all of my Slack channels have got that little 9+ bubble on them. Ooh. Where do I start? How am I supposed to get caught up on all of this stuff? I can't do this. Documentation is key, but if we push it all on someone in one go, things are going to get missed, that knowledge gap will grow, and all of your hard work immediately loses a lot of its value. So how do we do it better? Well, in the UK, people on parental leave are entitled to keeping in touch days, or KIT days. What this means is that they are able to work for up to 10 days through their period of leave, and those days are paid at full salary, which is awesome. Let's make use of those. Instead of pushing all of that information on our already exhausted and overwhelmed returner, use those KIT days and allow them to pull that information slowly over time throughout their period of leave. It's going to really reduce that information overload. Those check-ins will also help you navigate what your returner wants their return to look like. It's really important to understand how ready to return someone feels throughout their period of leave, and we get it right when we pace that return right. Does somebody want to be included in sprint velocity from week 1, even though they've just had 12 months off? Well, it's not for me, but I'm sure some developer out there would love that. Instead, do they want to spend a bit of time reading documentation, getting caught up with training, and maybe running through some coding katas until they feel a bit more at home? If they aren't going to be on a project team when they return, do they need clear goals and check-ins to make sure they're still adding value? Don't forget to give someone wins to win. We get it right for our returners when we drip feed information slowly throughout their period of leave. We get it right when we pace that return right. And also, one more thing. You can use those keeping in touch days to help your new parent reconnect with their lives outside of being a parent. That transition into parenthood is incredibly overwhelming, and it means that you can lose touch with who you see as your real self. It plays a big factor in post-adoption and postnatal depressions. I, for one, loved my kit days so much. I would take time to get dressed up in my favourite workwear. I would do my hair. I would put some makeup on, lovely. I would get a frothy coffee and maybe a pastry from somewhere, then waltz into the office looking like a business casual Morticia Adams. I was back, and I wanted the entire office to know that I was back. It was just a massive shame the office was basically empty because of COVID, but still. I really enjoyed being my old self again, and my team was so pleased to see me. It really filled me up and kept me going when long days of parenting ran me down. We get it right when we take the time to remind our new parent that they are still a person and not just mum or dad. We get it right with buddies. The purpose of a buddy is to be an advocate for our new parent when they're on leave and when they return. Yes, I'm on leave, and yes, I'm going to be off for up to a year, but it's important that my entire department don't completely forget I exist, and my buddy is going to make sure that doesn't happen. It's important that this buddy is chosen by the person taking leave and not allocated by a manager. It needs to be someone they feel really comfortable with, someone that they can talk to about work without it feeling stressful or, well, when they're supposed to be off. It also needs to be someone they feel they can be really honest with. When they return to work, there are going to be days where being apart from their child is really, really hard. And I, for one, didn't feel comfortable crying all over my line manager. We get it right when we give people space to be themselves. Buddies can also help with kit days. So imagine this, you're in on your kit day, you've booked in loads of meetings for your next kit day, and then you come in for that next kit day and find that meetings have been declined and not rebooked. And actually, your line manager, who you were really looking forward to talking to, is on holiday, and you didn't know because you've not looked at your laptop for 2 months. Whole day feels like a waste. Well, using those buddies to coordinate those invites for us means that they can keep an eye on them when we're not there. They can rebook in meetings. They can make sure people understand why that meeting has to happen on that day. Or they can help you book those meetings in. You can book your kit day in on a different day when your manager's actually going to be in. That first day back after leave is going to be really daunting. And it's going to be really important to have somebody there to welcome you back, prep your team, book these meetings in. It's going to be really important for your returner to feel like they are back. It's going to be a boost for their confidence. And it's especially important when somebody is working remotely. That return, though, lasts longer than that first day or that first week. That buddy relationship can and should continue throughout somebody's period of leave and for the few months after they return. It's going to take them a little while to feel settled in again, so it's important they have the right support network when they return for at least a little while. And that support network should include you as well, so don't be afraid to book check-ins regularly with people that come back from parental leave. After being out of the loop for so long, it's going to be a really great way to boost their confidence and improve their job performance. We get it right when we remember somebody throughout their period of leave, when we respect how challenging their return will feel, and when we provide the right levels of support through leave, from day one of return and beyond. Documentation, keeping in touch, and buddies. As individual things, all these things will make a great positive impact for your returner. But they are truly additive, so for maximum impact, implement them all. A note here is that these should be optional for anybody taking leave. So not everybody's going to want a buddy or a bright spotlight when they return to work, and we need to respect that choice. But we must do our bit so that opting in is entirely within their control. These are 3 changes you can make, but they're not the only things that you can do. Have a chat to the people in your team. Talk to people that have been on parental leave, have returned recently or are due to return soon. What worked for them? What didn't work? Also, each person is an individual, so when the time comes and somebody tells you that they are going to have to take some leave, start that conversation early about what leave looks like and what return looks like, so we get it right for that individual. If everything I've talked through today feels like way too much for your team right now, because it is a lot, here are some really simple and quick things you can implement straight away. When someone returns, have a ways of working session. Make sure everyone in the team understands their new working patterns. Make a fuss of somebody when they return. Make sure they know they're really valued. Or how about getting your organisation signed up to the Maternity Pledge? The Maternity Pledge is a social enterprise that helps organisations run a good maternity leave and return to work programme. It makes sure that mothers feel they still have a place at work, and it educates mothers-to-be in that significant identity shift into motherhood. It provides action plans and a handbook for employers, and also packs for employees to help support their perinatal mental health. I'm not affiliated with the Maternity Pledge, but it overlaps and aligns with so much of what I've talked about today that if nothing else, get your organisation signed up. There's one last thing that I think we all need to think about when it comes to returning from parental leave, why it's so important we get it right, and why it's so important we get it right now. In the UK, childcare costs are rising at an alarming rate. And this means parents are choosing to work. I made that choice so willingly. I love my kid, but I also love my job so much. But it takes a really supportive team for me to truly thrive, because I'm juggling 2 incredibly intense roles, developer and mum. When our new parents choose to return, we want them to choose us because they're awesome, we love working with them, and we don't want to lose them. Using techniques like documentation, keeping in touch, and buddies is exactly how we keep them. It's how we build that safe and welcoming environment for women and diverse genders, and how we de-risk taking leave. Taking leave is a choice, and returning is a choice. And as development leaders, we now know what we need to do to make that choice as easy for people as possible. But what if you have got parental leave on the horizon, or you've just returned to work and you can feel that performance anxiety creeping in? It's okay to be behind, to be tired. It's okay to feel like a completely different person. It's okay to leave early for nursery and school pickup. It's okay to juggle work and parenting when they're off sick. It's also okay to not work when they're off sick. It's okay to work part-time. It's also okay to work full-time. It's okay to switch off from work entirely when you are at home with your family. It's okay to miss them. And actually, it's okay to have a complete blast at work and stuff like this and not miss them. Taking parental leave was hard. And returning to work was really hard. Balancing work and parenting continues to be hard. But was it worth it? Yeah. And would I do it again? For her? Hell yeah. Thank you.